And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Tonight's forecast showing a little pressure tracking northeastward here just south of the Alaska Peninsula toward Sitkinak Island, the front up here into the Gulf of Alaska, wind and rain here up to the North Gulf Coast, and areas of rain, inland areas of southern Alaska, diminishing and then ending along the Alaska Range here. Pretty dry for the Kuskokwim Valley. Northward to the eastern Arctic coast, maybe some light snow at the first cold front that washes out as it makes landfall currently and passes off to the east here for the central North Slope, but staying dry for the eastern Arctic coast. And then the next front bringing an increasing chance of snow for the western Arctic coast into the western Brooks Range. Mixed precipitation through the Bering Strait down to St. Lawrence Island. Gusty north winds slowly diminishing here for the Alaska Peninsula. Still could see gusts 40 to 50 miles an hour this evening, but definitely diminishing for the eastern Aleutians. And rain and breezy here for the southeast coast. New low developing there west of the Queen Charlottes. And then tomorrow the front moves through, and so rain will be diminishing and becoming more showery for the Panhandle, but probably won't end completely. Areas of snow in the Coast Range with rain along the North Gulf Coast. Areas of mixed precipitation across south central Alaska. Cook Inlet, mainly over the mountainous terrain. Dry again for the Tanana Valley. Couple of weak troughs bringing some snow or rain and snow mixed for the North Slope Arctic coast. Mainly snow, whatever falls will be snow in the Brooks Range. And then for the day Monday, big area of snow develops Sunday night and pushes eastward here, bringing some, well, again, the winter storm watch for the eastern Alaska Range for several inches of snow falling, and areas of snow all the way up to the Brooks Range and North Slope and the eastern Arctic coast, maybe mixed out in the western Arctic coast here. Wet here for the Yukon Delta coast of the Bering Strait, and more showers and rain for the Panhandle. Light winds, dry conditions for the southern Bering Sea Aleutians right into Bristol Bay for Monday and Monday afternoon with some sunshine, as well as some sun breaks over the central interior. Coastal water forecasts, south coast here, east winds 15 knots, central coast south at 20 knots for Sunday. Small craft advisories for the north coast for south or east to southeast winds at 25 knots. Small craft advisories for Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait. Southeast winds 25 knots, seas 5 feet. Lynn Canal south at 20. South 15 knots for Lynn Canal with 3-foot seas for Monday. Southeast 20 Stevens Passage, southeast 15 Clarence Strait here. Central and south coast, southwest winds 15 to 20 knots with those seas up to 13 feet. And south to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots for the north coast. Cook Inlet, north winds 20 to 30 knots for the day Sunday. North 30 knots for Kamishak Bay. North 25 for the Barren Islands. Northeast 20 for the western Arctic coast. The western North Gulf Coast, eastern North Gulf Coast. Southeast winds 25 to 30 knots with small craft advisories for Prince William Sound. East winds at 25 knots, seas at 6 feet. And then lighter winds for Prince William Sound on Monday, southeast at 15, those seas down to 2 feet again. And south to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots there around Middleton Island, western North Gulf Coast. Northwest at 15. North to northwest winds 15 knots for Cook Inlet. Gale warnings for Kamishak Bay. Northwest winds 35 knots and about 30 knots for the Barren Islands. And for the Alaska Peninsula, Sunday, northwest winds 20 to 25 knots. North winds 20 knots for Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, north to northeast winds 20 to 25 knots with seas 7 to 14 feet. And for Monday, Kodiak Island, northwest winds 25 knots, seas 6 feet. North winds or north-northwesterlies 25 to 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. Bristol Bay, north winds 25 knots. Eastern Aleutians tomorrow, north to northwest winds 20 to 30 knots with seas 6 to 10 feet. Light north winds 15 knots for Adak and Atka, Amchitka Island, Kiska to Shimmy and Attu. Variable winds at 10 knots or less with 4 to 5 foot seas. And then for Monday, out here from Kiska to Shimya, south to southeast winds at 20 knots. Light variable winds for Amchitka Island, northeast 15 for Adak and Atka. And north to northeast winds 20 to 25 knots for the eastern Aleutians with 5 to 8 foot seas. Southwest coast, small craft advisories. North winds 25 knots. North winds 25 knots, St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, and St. Matthew Island, while the Pribilofs looking at a north wind tomorrow at 20 knots with 8 foot seas. And then for Monday, northwest 15 there for St. Paul and St. George. Small craft advisories continue for the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, northwest at 25. West winds 20 knots, St. Matthew Island, Yukon Delta coast, as well as St. Lawrence Island. And the eastern Boulevard Sea coast tomorrow, north to west winds 10 to 15 knots, southwest at 10 for the central coast, west at 10 for the western Arctic coast, Chukchi Sea, north to northwest winds 20 to 25 knots. And then for Monday for the Chukchi Sea, west-southwest 15 to 20 knots, west 15 for the western Arctic coast, southwest 15 for the central coast, and west to north winds 10 to 15 knots here with 2 to 3 foot seas for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast.